Hey friend, thank you for joining me for another episode of the ODAT Chat podcast. My name is Arlena and I'll be your host. Today we're doing a step work call and we're doing step 3 with Laura. We're actually working out of A Woman's Way Through the 12 Steps Workbook by Stephanie Covington. She's a PhD. If you would like to purchase a copy of the book, you can find it on Amazon. You can find the link to it on my website at odatchat.com. And yeah, so we're going to be doing step 3 with Laura. And she asked a very important question at the end, towards the end. And her question was along the lines of, how is doing all this step work going to help me stay sober? And I just thought, it just hit me like a ton of bricks that was such an important question to ask, because I hear it a lot in online 12-step groups and in meetings where people are talking about the problem, right? They're talking about the drugs and the alcohol. They're talking about the problem, but you don't find the light by continued investigation of the darkness. At some point, we get what the problem is, right? Can't stop. That's the problem. But we don't need to keep talking about that. We need to start talking about the solution. And the solution is about dealing with our feelings that make us want to drink, right? It's the compulsion to drink is driven by the feelings that we don't want to deal with, right? So my encouragement to you is to submit to the steps, do the self-examination process so that you can connect with these feelings, give space to these feelings, and resolve them, right? Let's resolve the resentment. Let's resolve the negative feelings that drive you to drink or use. And then let's go out and have some fun. I mean, we don't get sober to not have fun. I mean, people who have recovered, they're the funnest people I know, right? Anyway, that's kind of my lecture for the day. Let's focus on the solution. The solution is about self-examination and getting to the root of the problem. It's about causes and conditions. So, anyway, Laura is on step 3. If you haven't heard steps 1 and 2, you can find them on the website at odatchat.com. You can also find them on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, a bunch of different places. And if you don't have access to any of those, you can subscribe to the newsletter and just have a link delivered right to your email inbox. So you can subscribe to the newsletter at odatchat.com as well. And there you have it. That's all I got. So I hope that helps. I hope you enjoy this episode with Laura. If you have any questions for me, you can email me at arlena@odatchat.com. All right, there you have it. Enjoy this episode and let me know what you think. Have a great day. All right. Well, Laura, thank you so much for joining me on the ODAT Chat podcast.
Thank you for having me.
We're doing step 3. You are just cruising right along.
Yeah, this one was a tough one. This one was tougher for me than the first 2.
Really?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there were a lot of things on this sheet that I really had to think about. And even so, I'm not sure that I wrote down an acceptable answer.
Oh, well, don't worry about that. I mean, whatever comes up for you is what's supposed to come up. It's like, we'll just start where you are. And, that's the point of the exercise, right? Is it gets you thinking about things that you may or may not have thought about before.
And it did. So that was good.
Yeah.
So there were some things. So I'm not sure where you wanted to start.
Let's start with asking God for some help, because I could sure use it today.
Sounds good.
All right. Dear Father, thank you very much for this time with Laura. I just pray that you guide our minds and our hearts to be led to whatever it is that you would have us learn today. And I'm just so grateful for this time. I just pray for your help and growing and learning more. Thank you very much. Amen.
Amen.
All right. I better silence my computer. It's making all kinds of noises.
You better do mine too.
Yeah. Okay, so we're doing step 3, which is made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood him. So the reading is the Big Book, Chapter 5, How It Works, pages 58 through 63. And it says to the last paragraph on the page. So you were saying that you struggled with this exercise. Why, what were you struggling with?
So the part where it talks about like having control over situations, I really had a hard time with coming up with examples, concrete examples from my life that I could use to answer that. So the question says, look up control in the dictionary and list 2 to 5 techniques that you use to control people, places, or things. Okay. Mm-hmm. So control is the power to influence or direct people's behavior or the course of events. I get that, but I don't even know what controlling a place would look like. Do you know what I mean? It's just, I get controlling people, I get controlling things, maybe even situations, but that one for me, I couldn't think of an example.
Yeah, then, I think the first thing that comes up for me is like work or home, and that might be a little too high level, but let's just work with what came up for you, because whatever is coming up is probably what needs to be addressed.
More needs to be addressed. Okay.
Yeah.
And maybe I had such a hard time with this one because really, I don't feel like I have any issues with controlling people, places, or things. And I think that was something, I don't know if I shared this with you, but my mom died 5 years ago, and it was very sudden. And up until that time, I hadn't dealt with any tragedies in my life. So it was really a profound event in my life. And since then, I feel like I kind of gave control to everything else. I don't care to control things. I don't care. I used to get upset early on in our marriage when he would go to his parents' house on Sunday. That's a normal thing for kids to do, is to go to their parents' house on Sunday to have dinner. Well, I wouldn't really want to go over there. So he would go, and then I would just be happy at first because I had the house to myself. But as time went on, I'm starting to think, oh my gosh, well, they're probably talking about me. And then I have all these negative, horrible feelings. And then I'm really ticked at him because it's been 4 hours and he's still over there. And so that type of situation, I would try to control, because I would, maybe call him and be like, hey, I need you to come home, things like that, because I'm unhappy. Whereas and I think it was probably that horrible event that turned me around to where I am not like that at all. I don't know, it's hard to explain, but say he goes to his parents' house for dinner on a Sunday and I don't feel like tagging along, I don't feel like going. So I stay home, but no part in my mind is ever even thinking that he's talking about me or being malicious. And I think that's what it was more before, just not thinking that he's doing things intentionally, which wasn't the case, and it's not the case. But so maybe that's my problem, is that really I don't think that control is really an issue for me at all. So I came up with a couple examples, and I don't really even think they apply. One of the things I said was, sometimes, and people who are listening, I hope they don't judge my parenting skills because this sounds really bad, but sometimes I'll bribe them to go for a walk with me or ride their bike with me. For example, sometimes I'll tell my oldest son, he loves Burger King and I hate getting Burger King for him. But I'll be like, okay, well, if we ride our bikes up to Burger King, we can go have lunch at Burger King, So that to me is kind of manipulating the situation to control it.
Okay.
That's one of the examples that I came up with.
That's a pretty good one. Let me ask you a couple questions. So, in regards to your husband, it's you're not feeling up to going to the Sunday dinner thing. And but after a certain amount of time, you want them to come home.
Yeah, that was previous me. That was me
Okay.
a long time ago when...
Before your mother died?
Yeah. So,
and then after your mother died, do you still not go, or?
It's not a regular thing. He doesn't go that often. He goes, sometimes I do go and sometimes I don't. It just depends on what I have going on. Sometimes I have work to do to catch up on, and then I'd say, well, I'm just going to stay home and do my work. It's more of being just a healthier person, like just more healthy with my relationships, I guess, and it was never fair for me before to act the way I did, but it was me controlling the situation. That's what I was thinking of as I read that question.
Okay.
That to me is what controlling looks like.
Yeah, it's interesting that they, in the exercise, they say people, places, or things, as opposed to, how are you controlling how did you try to control your drinking? You know what I mean?
Is that what they were going for? Because I could answer that in like 3 seconds.
I know. No, I think they're asking about how we control people, places, or things, because those are the reasons typically, those are the stressors, right? Like there's stressors in life. And then we try to find ways of controlling those things instead of managing our feelings around them. Is what I think.
Yeah, you know what? You're right. And I can make a connection with the reading where they give an example of somebody going through life as they're like the creators of a play, and they're trying to orchestrate the lighting and the sound and the characters and all that, and trying to control everything. So that's what that makes me think of. And that's.
Yeah, I mean, it's oftentimes it's like, I think everybody's had that experience where they would just be like, God, if these people would just act right, then everything would be okay. And what we're really saying is if these people behaved in a way that I deemed appropriate according to my standards and my rules, then I would feel at peace. I would have peace. So what I know about you is that you have some family dynamics that are very stressful, right? With it's your sister-in-law, right?
Yes.
Yeah, with your sister-in-law. And I would imagine that dynamics, spins out and affects your husband and your in-laws and the kids involved, your kids. And so controlling is about, how do you process that situation? Are you laying down the law with your husband about certain things, or the kids, or do you have demands, or, where is the stress coming from in your life, really? And typically what we try to do to manage the stress in our lives is control things, asserting our will over other things. And so instead of maybe dealing with the root cause. So I think that's the whole point of this exercise is, what are our control mechanisms around things that are stressing us out, that are not healthy, that might end up leading us to feel actually like more wound up, tight. And then once we get into that place, it's like, well, how do you get out of that? Well, drinking sounds like a good idea at that point. Because what we're looking for is relief from all the stresses that we feel. So it's really what is causing you the stress, and then how do you attempt to control it?
So maybe stopping that before it gets to that point to where you feel like you're out of control.
Well, I think it goes all the way back to giving your feelings, even your negative feelings, some space. Like it's what keeps coming up for me is that we're trying to stay in balance. And I'm not talking balance like on a razor's edge, but balance that is like within range, like a range of healthy emotion. So, for instance, I had a stressful situation with my son over the weekend. And so I want to do some spiritual bypassing, meaning I just want to skip the negative feelings and then just go to gratitude. Like, oh my God, it could have been so much worse. And he's going to make up on recovery. But what I actually feel is stress about what could have happened, or sadness about the kind of pain he's in, or, you know what I mean? It's like, oh, the bills that are going to come from this. It's like, but I don't want to dwell in that either. So in your life, when a situation happens, like some sort of family dynamic, that those are typically the stress. It's either like finance or romance or family, like what happens to you? What happens to you when you get stressed out? How do you attempt to control it? Because typically we don't feel our feelings, right? We try to control it instead. Like we get all fearful. Like if money is an issue, it's like, okay, now we're going to tighten up the budget. Nobody's going to have any fun. You know what I mean? It's like we're cutting back, and then we go into fear and deprivation mode, and it brings just more stress, right? Because it's not realistic. It's like going overboard. So, if you can even think back, over the last couple weeks, what are the things that have been stressing you out, and how do you attempt to control them?
The things that stress me out the most right now are things that are completely out of my control. So the only thing that I do to control it is to just, put up those boundaries. Not associate with it.
Boundaries are good. So are we talking like, are you removing yourself from the situation?
If I'm in the situation, then yes. Or just not engaging. If there's phone calls or messages, just not engaging with that.
That actually sounds like a healthy response to it.
I've got, not only my sister-in-law, but I've got other sisterly drama too on the other side. And it was like an all-day thing yesterday. And, like somebody wanted me to post something, and I'm just like, no, like I'm not engaging in this. I can't, it's useless. It's a waste of energy. And it's all over right now for whatever reason. I don't know what's going on with the universe, but for whatever reason in my life specifically, I don't know if everyone else's life is right now, but the universe is in some major chaos, like just drama everywhere. It's insane. And it's not, but luckily, knock on wood, I'm drama free. My immediate family is drama free, but it's all around. It's crazy.
Yeah. So I guess the only thing that comes up for me around that, I think it's really, you seem to have really healthy boundaries around that, which is really good, because that can, like things that are beyond your control, it's good to disengage. I think the only danger, like the out of balance side of disengaging is just like completely shutting down. Right. Yeah. And that's typically the purpose of using drugs and alcohol, is to help us disengage from our feelings. And so the challenge might be for you to, when something comes up, is to speak your truth without blame or judgment. Right. And that's typically in the form of, I feel sad. I feel confused. I'm at a loss here. I don't know. I want to help. I don't know how to help you. I'm not willing to compromise. You know what I mean? You see where I'm going with that? It's like,
yeah, no, I do. That makes total sense. So maybe not closing that door so quickly, and, having, responses that still disengage me, but don't necessarily close that door. I think I'm a little bit too quick to slam the door.
And how does that affect the people in your life when you say you slam the door? Are you met with anger or more drama?
No, not usually. It's not anything dramatic. It's just, I'm not going to read those messages anymore because they're not making me feel good. That type of thing. Right.
No, that's good. Okay, well, I think that's fair. I mean, I think this is maybe one of those situations where more will be revealed now that you have sort of the ideas of, what the purpose of this step, it's like, where are we trying to, basically the point of the step is, where are we trying to do God's job? You know what I mean? And so it's like, and you want to, it's like we try to learn new ways of engaging with those people, with those around us, those closest to us, because they're typically the ones who give us the most stress, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so we need to sort of separate, what's mine and what's yours. But ultimately, the things that are ours, is we're trying to respond in a different way than we have before, right? And that's where sometimes it's important to have a higher power that you can turn your will and your life over to, which means I'm just going to stay open because maybe there is a solution here that I haven't even thought of. Right?
That's a way to think of it.
Yeah. And, some people are overly controlling. And so it's very easy to see how their control mechanisms come into play. And then some people are completely disengaged. And so it's harder to pin down. And I think that you might fall into the second category.
Yeah, maybe to a fault, to where like even picking a restaurant, like I don't, I'd prefer someone to make all the decisions for me, Yeah.
And when we do that, the interesting dynamic becomes that it's easy to go into that victim mode, right? It's easy to slip into the victim mode. Being overly dependent on someone else to make decisions and all that stuff, they become resentful. And then it's like giving all of your power over to someone else because it's like maybe you're just so resigned and you just don't have the ability to, but then you have to sort of live and die by somebody else's rules. It creates like a weird power dynamic.
Interesting.
So so anyway, these are just ideas that you might want to kind of, once I hear ideas, sometimes I walk through my life with these new ideas and I can see how they're playing out in my life in ways I didn't recognize before. So
yeah, you kind of look at it through a different lens. It's interesting. So this is really good. All good things to be aware of for sure.
Yeah. Yes. So, let's see. Okay. So that's fine. It's like, this is just, isn't it just an exercise? It gets you thinking about certain things. And I think we've identified that maybe, you have disengaged, like where you might be out of balance is on the disengaged side. Right. Okay. Yeah. And it's just something to be aware of that's maybe kind of your, where you need to be careful because you don't want to be out of balance too much.
Yeah.
And your way of controlling things is to not control anything.
Interesting. Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah. So
interesting.
So maybe some examples, maybe your techniques, as it says here, is to not take any responsibility. You just defer it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that might be your get down.
Yeah, okay.
You get a little case of the fuckets, and you're just like, whatever.
You made me look at a few things here in a totally different light. That's interesting. That's good.
That's good. Good. That's the point. Okay. Let's see. List an example of each of these control methods. We kind of talked about disengaging and turning your power over, not taking responsibility. Explain what you imagine would happen in each example if you're unable to control it. So maybe in this case, what would happen if you tried to control the situation? Do you even know what you want in these situations? Like, no. I feel like you've so disengaged. Like, do you even know what you want anymore? Like, it sounds like you are resigned.
I think so. No, I don't know what I want anymore.
Yeah, that makes sense, right? Like,
it does.
And that's probably, if we track it all the way back, you mentioned your mom dying 5 years ago, and that must have been, it sounds like it was unexpected. Is that right?
Yeah, completely unexpected.
So, and you and your mom were close?
We were. I mean, we never had the relationship to where we call each other like all the time. We're not big phone callers, but we'd see, she lived like 20 minutes away. She worked a lot, so we were just very busy, but, I would see her every couple months, and, we had a good relationship. She died July 3rd.
Oh my goodness, it's coming.
We all had plans to go up north, and my family, my husband and my sons, went up like on a Tuesday night, a couple days before the 4th. And then we got the call the next day that she was, she went to the hospital and has to have emergency surgery. I mean, her car was already packed up to go on vacation. She had toys for all the grandkids in her car. And she made it through the surgery, but then she ended up passing away the next day, which was July 3rd. So yeah, it was just completely unexpected. And like I said before, I'd never lost somebody besides a grandpa who was old, and it was pretty bad.
Well, isn't that interesting that we are doing this on June 27th, just before the anniversary of your mother's death?
Yeah.
You know, and it's not surprising to me that you might be a little detached, because I think even in your subconscious mind, you might be preparing yourself like a layer of protection to, avoid feeling the feelings that would naturally come up.
Yeah,
on the anniversary
this week. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. It's, it's coming and it's going to be a heavy day, or I don't know. What did you do? What have you done in past years do you memorialize her in any way, or?
Not usually. I mean, a lot of times, she bought a cabin up north a year before she passed away. So a lot of times we'll go up to the cabin, and then, there's the 4th of July parade up there. And so we're usually with family, and we usually go to 4th of July things. And, other than that, we don't have like a ritual or a routine to memorialize her or anything like that. So yeah.
Well, I wonder if you sort of set aside some time where you remember your mom, light a candle for her, maybe set aside, some time to look through pictures, or just think about her and allow whatever feelings you might have to come up. And, like a set amount of time, like, I don't know, a couple hours, an hour, I don't know, but like whatever you think is appropriate, to be able to talk about her. And that way it just gives you like a little bit of defined space to allow those feelings to come up and be addressed and processed to resolution. Right.
Right.
Mourning is one of those things. It's like waves that come unexpectedly. The feelings come when they want to. And what I found is interesting is sometimes, like in grieving, like the feelings come up when I'm the most supported and when I'm the strongest. That's when the feelings tend to come up.
It's interesting.
Yeah. So anyway, just keep that in mind. And
that's a good idea.
Yeah. And maybe because what I know for sure is that when I don't deal with my feelings, they come out sideways.
Yeah.
And I'm so disconnected from my feelings that, not only do they come out sideways, I mean, it's just better they are going to be there. They aren't going to just disappear. They either wait for you or they come out sideways. So it's better to just give them a little space and resolve as they come up. So anyway, there's just some ideas on how to, because it was interesting. That was almost the first thing you talked about is.
It must be on my mind.
Yeah, absolutely. Totally understandable, right? Maybe you haven't had an opportunity to really process a lot of those feelings. So now would be a good time. So, let's see, I want to go back to a couple other little things. So you mentioned bribing your kids to go for bike rides. Guilty. I do that shit all the time. So.
My friends at work say the same thing. They're like, we do that too. Don't worry. But it just makes me feel so bad.
Listen, I think guilt is a mother's lot. We're just gonna feel guilty and
forever.
Maybe we can grow to feel more compassionate towards ourselves. We're just humans doing the best we can, and women today have more expectations and responsibilities than any other time in history. And we produce more and do more, and we still feel like crap about our level of, output. So I think we just need to give ourselves a break. So I'm not above a little bribery either. My kids' currency is McDonald's is one of them. I hate it, but and then the other one is like video game time. So
yeah, extra video game time for sure.
Yeah, or removal of video game time.
That's the first line of defense when they're getting consequence.
Yeah, I mean, it's not unreasonable to learn what your child's currency is and then use it against them. Sure. Maybe that's a form of course, it's a form of manipulation and control, but whatever. It's better than throwing out the beat down every once in a while.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
On that second part of the question where it says, what would happen if you were not able to control? And I just was like, well, I'd feel really inadequate as a parent if I can't get my kids to take a walk with me, But I think I was out of line. I think I meant more in line now. I know.
Yeah. Well, listen, it's important to pay attention to the things that, like, inadequate is another word of saying not good enough. Right? Or not good enough. It reinforces an idea of low self-esteem. So I think it's important to identify where are the places where we are experiencing low self-esteem so that we can kind of counterbalance that either with compassion or a different kind of strategy. So, and I think that's something that moms really struggle with overall is feeling inadequate. So,
absolutely.
So let's see, explain an alternative way of handling each situation by changing your own actions and attitudes instead of trying to control them. What did you come up for that one? Or you might even have some new thoughts in light of what we already discussed, but.
Yeah, because the one that I wrote doesn't really apply to the things that we talked about. I think maybe what you said, just, reaching out a little bit more when certain situations come up instead of just, like blocking the door, just maybe opening the lines of communication a little bit better.
Okay, reaching out instead of isolating, that seems good.
Yeah.
I know that's the first thing I want to do is isolate.
Because I think reaching out is really uncomfortable sometimes.
Always. Yeah, and you've been doing really good with that. It's very inspiring.
I had like 4 wellness. No, you don't call them wellness calls.
Willingness call, being willing.
Can I just call them wellness calls? Because I cannot get willingness through my head. They're wellness calls. They make me feel well.
I mean, you can call them whatever you want. I don't care. But I call them willingness calls because it's about me being willing to do something I don't want to do. And so much of recovery is me doing something I don't want to do and not doing something I want to do. Mm-hmm. So it's about, where's my willingness today? I'm turning my will and my life over to the care of God. So where am I? And I just need constant reminders to be willing.
Yeah, those calls are really hard to make.
Oh, aren't they though?
So I talked to 4 girls, 4 girls in between 2 days ago.
So awesome.
And we all had really great conversations. I mean, each call was at least minimum like 30 minutes long. We had great conversations, but I don't know why they're so anxiety provoking. Like, oh my gosh. It's crazy.
It's self-centered fear, right? It's like, what am I going to say? I am going to be interrupting somebody. I'm not, it's like, it's all I. Mm-hmm. And what we don't think about is, I love getting phone calls. I love being useful to someone else.
Right. We don't think about that at all.
We're not thinking about other people. We're just thinking about ourselves. It's self-centered fear. But that's the point of the exercise, is if you have the courage to break through that fear and pick up the phone and call, not text, but you pick up the phone and call somebody and actually hear a live voice at the other end, you face the fear and it disappears. I did it today myself, to be honest. I was inspired by all the stuff that you're doing. I'm a newcomer in my community. I don't know anybody. I had to do some. I was terrified.
Oh my gosh. That's great. That's right. Because you just moved and you moved states, right?
I did. I moved out of state and I need to get to know the women in my community. And I have tons of people that I could call back home, but I need to start reaching out to some new people. And it really did give me a whole new level of empathy and compassion for everyone who's just starting. And I am asking you guys to do these things. I have to be willing to do them myself too, right? So it was just kind of funny. I was like, ugh. So I finally picked up the phone and made some calls.
Great. That's awesome. Did they all go good? All really good?
Yeah, they went well. It's like I left a couple messages. They called me back. We had these nice conversations. I mean, everybody gets it, right? It's like we all know the deal.
I had so many different aha moments talking to these different women who are all in like pretty much different places in their sobriety, and some are a lot different than me, and some are a lot like me, and some are both, and just so many things that were said that were like, oh my gosh, I can so relate to that. Yeah. You know, it was good, and it made me really realize that I do need to make some calls to get local numbers and get local connections, because it is such an important part of it. I talk to my sister every day. We're super close, and my husband and I are super close. But when I'm going through a struggle with this, they have no idea what it's like. They just don't. Yeah. They can listen to me and they can sympathize, but they can't empathize like you can. You know, it's
right.
Completely different.
It is completely different when you're going through it. That's awesome. No, you're doing great. I found it very inspiring. It kind of gave me the courage to be like, okay, I have to practice what I preach.
Thank you for saying that, because, you know, it makes me feel better knowing that it's normal to be.
Yes, so normal. And I have lots of practice. I mean, for heaven's sakes, I do cold calling professionally.
Right.
Often, but yeah, I mean, that's my job, is to get on the phone and call people. So, but when it's personal, it's totally different.
Yeah, totally different. And I can... You know, at work, it's totally different than it is personally. It's crazy.
Yeah. I don't know about you, but it makes you feel kind of vulnerable.
It does. Yeah, for sure.
But typically the other women on the other end of the line are just so kind, and they've been there and done that. So they'll make it really easy for you. So
yeah.
It's been good. I'm so glad you guys have each other on the list too. All the girls doing the willingness calls.
Cool. Yeah. Cool.
Okay. So let's see. What is the difference between submission and surrender? This one's always a funny one. I feel like every time I do answer this for myself, I come up with something different. What did you have for this?
I thought, so when you're submissive, you still own it. You know, it being in quotation marks, whatever it is, you still own it. You're just kind of putting on a show, putting on an act, because that definition says the action or fact of accepting or yielding to a superior force or another person. So
it's powerless. That sounds like a very powerless position.
But I said to surrender, you know, the definition for that is to like give up or hand over. So for that one, I thought, you give it away to somebody or something, and you no longer have it. You no longer own it. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I mean, I almost sort of see it. It's almost kind of the opposite for me, like submissive. It's like, I don't have any power. Like somebody's exerting their will over me, so I have to submit. Like there's no choice in that. But to surrender, it's like, it's me choosing. It's like surrender to win type of thing. It's like I chose to go to Alcoholics Anonymous because I realized I didn't have any. Once I start drinking, I have no control over the amount or anything like that. You know what I mean?
I do. Yeah.
I don't have the choice to stop once I start.
I think you're looking at it a little bit back upside down from me. I'm thinking when I'm submissive and I still own it, I feel like it is something really negative, like maybe my alcoholism.
Oh, okay. Submissive is as a negative. You tie that to a negative feeling.
Yeah, that's why we're kind of backwards, but I think we're kind of on those same thought lines though.
I guess a lot of this feels like semantics to me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, both suck, let's be honest. I don't want to be submissive or have to surrender, but...
Right, exactly. But yeah, it's all semantics.
But we're talking about turning our will and our life over to a power greater than ourselves, a higher power, right? And so I'm willing to, maybe submit to the higher power, by choice, rather than because I do feel sort of beat down by my alcoholism and addictions at times.
Yeah.
So it's just like this awareness where I recognize, you know what, I am totally powerless over this situation. I need help, kind of a thing.
Okay.
Let's see. Give an example of a situation where you felt your behavior had been submissive.
Just today, and this kind of goes along with what you were just talking about of feeling inadequate. My 16-year-old is diabetic, so he had his diabetic checkup this morning. When he has his checkup, they do what's called an A1C test. So that kind of tells him what his numbers have been like for the past few months. And we thought, because of his numbers, we thought his A1C would go down, and it actually went up, which is bad.
Oh.
So she came down hard on him, and she came down hard on me too. But there was a lot of things that I wanted to say to her that I just held in because it was just pointless, But
So she came down, this is the doctor, she came down hard on you. What does that mean?
She's a nurse practitioner. She gave him a whole physiology lesson on what's happening to his blood cells because this number's not going down, and that was probably really good for him to hear. But then she looks at me and she's like, what do you do if he doesn't do his homework for a whole week? And I'm like, well, I ground him. Okay, well, if he's not keeping up on his numbers, you need to ground him, that type of thing. And I'm just like, dealing with diabetes in a teenager is really difficult. And I don't think I would ever ground him for not managing it. I feel like I would come down hard on me and my husband, but it's up to us to manage, not him. You know what I mean? So I just stayed quiet, and instead of saying how I really felt, I just listened and was like, okay,
Right. Cause you just wanted to get out of the situation, probably.
Yeah.
So here's the tricky part of a situation like that, right? So if you do, the definition of insanity, right? Doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. So and listen, I can't imagine what it would be like to try to control a diabetic teenager, much less a regular teenager. I mean, I'm sure he's a regular teenager, but you know what I mean? It's like, here's the thing though. It's like we have guilt and shame, so we get defensive. However, something's not working, so we need to do something different. Right. And so it's not to say, to kind of throw up your hands or disengage maybe, is not going to change that. There needs to be, it's dangerous for his numbers to go up.
Right.
So it sounds like she's trying to implement some controls, and what I know just from our conversation is that your tendency is to disengage. So she's asking you to do the exact opposite, which I would imagine feels very uncomfortable.
You mean engaging with her or my son with his care?
Well, she's asking you to do something different, and maybe punishment is not the way to go. I don't know. I'm not suggesting any solutions, to be honest, because I don't know. But there is this, when something's not working and somebody points it out, our first tendency is to be like, you know what, fuck you. You don't know what I'm going through. Yeah. Right. Exactly. You don't know what it's like. And that may be true, but we also have to change something, like actions have to change.
Okay. So listen to this. So the whole time that this is going down and she's giving him his lecture and she's like, and then she's turning to me and talking to me, like that whole time, like I had certain things going on in my head that I was thinking like, okay, too many times after dinner, I'm like, did you do insulin? And he'll be like, yeah. And I thought in my head, okay, after meals, he's going to physically have to show us injecting himself. Then I'm thinking, okay, we're going to do this, we're going to do this, and we're going to do this to help rectify the situation. But the way she was talking to me, I didn't even want to say I know in my head that that's what I'll do, but it was a fight that just wasn't even worth arguing over. And it was fine. I listened, and by the end, we were laughing at our jokes, and it was fine. It just made me feel inferior, submissive,
Yeah. Did you feel like she was condescending?
Yeah, I think more than anything, I think that it was the guilt and shame feelings that just made me feel so defensive. So,
yeah.
I don't even know how much of it was her versus how much of it was me and how I was feeling and those emotions, So no fault of hers, but, it was...
Well, and here's the thing. You're not going to be able to control what somebody says, but you can certainly control what you say. And I wonder, like, if you just owned your guilt and shame and said it out loud, man, that diffuses the situation. That totally changes the energy in the room because you're displaying some vulnerability, but it absolutely takes the power out. It's like, wow, when I hear you say that, I feel so guilty and I feel embarrassed. You know what I mean? It's just fucking call it out. Say what it is. Because it's like our pride and ego that wants to be defensive. It's like, I'm not guilty. But at this inside, it's like we do feel guilty, which is why we're saying we're not guilty.
And then we lash out or we get all defensive. I totally see that.
It's hard to be objective when we're emotional is the thing. It's like objectively...
Talking about this, I feel like the next time I'm in one of those situations, I feel like hopefully I'll look at it a little bit differently.
I suspect that you will.
Yeah. So
sometimes we just need to know what the other options are. In my mind, everything is black and white. It's either I submit or I fight with you. But in my, it never occurs. It never occurred to me I could speak. It never occurred to me before to just be honest about how I was actually feeling. Like my knee-jerk reaction is to pretend that I'm not feeling anything.
Pretend you're okay. Yeah.
Pretend I'm okay just to save face.
Yeah.
But
gosh.
man, I've been in situations where I'm just like, I'll just call it out. And people are so unaccustomed to others being honest about their feelings. It really throws them off a little bit. It's kind of funny.
Interesting.
But It does take the wind out of your sails. I mean, when people sense resistance, I think the tendency is to lean in and push more.
Mm-hmm.
But when you just acknowledge, yeah, you're right, man, this has been really challenging and I don't know how to control my child. And this is a scary situation. And it's just interesting how the energy changes and people seem to be more compassionate when they get that you understand how bad it is.
Yeah. And she wasn't mean or probably not even condescending. She was nice about it.
You just felt guilty.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah. Man, it's tough being a parent.
It is, man. It's the hardest job around.
The toughest job is worse than the Peace Corps, right? The toughest job you'll ever love.
I think so.
Oh, that's funny. Okay, let's move on. So give an example of a situation where you felt your behavior had been submissive. Well, you just gave one. That was good. How could you have handled the situation by surrendering? Well, we just kind of talked about being honest about our actual feelings.
What I wrote on my paper, I don't know. But now I do know. That's perfect. No, that's a perfect answer. So to just admit it, and admit how I'm feeling. And I can see that would just eliminate a lot of rotten feelings. So
yeah.
That's good. That's good.
Okay.
I like that.
Good. Name a few instances of destructive selfishness in your past behavior. Did you write anything down for that one?
It's number 9, right?
10.
So going home early from a family party to drink, or driving buzzed for convenience, or putting my kids to bed hastily so I can get back to the drink. Those are the things that I came up with.
Okay, those are good. Very, very, very typical.
Yeah.
I mean, not fun when you look back on it when you're sober, but very, very typical things I've heard. List 3 ways you can improve your own sense of self by practicing healthy selfishness?
So I put by taking time daily for exercise and meditation and reading. That was my number one. And the number two, by setting and evaluating my goals frequently. And then number three, keeping up on my hair and nails and appearance. Sometimes in the summertime, it's really hard to. It really does make you feel better when you have like fresh hair. And
I know. My mother-in-law used to always tell me, she goes, no matter how poor you are, always have a good haircut.
It's the only thing that matters. No, it's not. But
we got to walk around with our hair. I mean, it's so funny. It's like there's just something. We all have to have standards, right?
Right. Exactly.
No, self-care is really important no matter how you see it. So
yeah,
it's good to know like what's important to you. So
yeah.
Let's see, try to do one of these each day in the upcoming week and note them here or in your journal. So,
okay. So yeah, the first day I wrote exercise, the second day I wrote reading, the third day I wrote exercise, and then the fourth day I wrote meditation, and then I journaled at the end of the meditation.
That's awesome. Oh, that's a lot of good self-care.
Yeah, I mean, it was just like real quick each day, but I think it was helpful. I'd like to do a couple each day, but I'll get there.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's see, at the end of each day, write down how you felt, both physically and emotionally, after doing these self-healing acts.
Okay, yeah, all of that made me feel good. After the exercise, I would feel free. After all of it, I would feel less stressed. I'd feel motivated after reading. I was reading a cool new book that was getting me motivated.
What book was it?
Gosh, what's it called? I've got this addiction of books, and like I'll go to Goodwill and I'll buy like 10 books. So
oh God, I love books.
I just went to Goodwill like 2 days ago and I bought so many books. So this one is like How to Slow Down to Life Speed, I think it's called. So it's like just slowing down to not having like a million windows open and not answering a million messages, and just slowing down and focusing on just, one thing at a time. So it was really good book. So I was feeling optimistic after that, and pumped after reading and exercising. So all of those things, sometimes it's hard for me to get started on them, especially the exercise, but man, after each one of these things, I feel so good.
Yeah. I mean, what you're really talking about is like momentum.
The things that make you feel so good, like those willingness calls, there's all these things that make you feel so good are so hard to do. It's a bummer.
Well, it's only hard to do in the beginning. You do build momentum. It's the inertia of starting. That's the hard part. But once you've started, there is power in momentum, right? Now that you've made a few phone calls, now you're probably encouraged to make a few more. And as you maintain that practice, you have momentum, right? Like same thing with exercise. It's like there is power in momentum. So, and I love that the idea, like when you just described the book, it's like, yeah, be here now. Do the next right thing. These are all things that we hear and program in recovery.
Yeah.
But it's like, listen, I think I have like almost 90 titles on my Audible account. I'm kind of an information junkie myself. So, no, that's good. Okay. So lucky number 13 at the end of the week, reflect on these actions and write how it affected your spiritual growth. What has changed for you? So do you feel like more connected? Do you feel do you see more evidence of God? How is that playing out for you?
I'm not clear. One thing that I was having a question about after our last talk is I understood step 1 and I understood step 2, but I don't understand as I'm getting these cravings and I'm starting to get triggered. And I don't know if that's just because it's summertime and there's a lot going on or whatever, but I don't understand how the steps help me stop drinking. You know what I mean? Like, and this step was a little bit more like tying it together, like, oh, okay, I'm handing this over. I'm not going to be inconvenienced by this, meaning like my alcoholism. I'm surrendering it and handing it over. I'm giving, it up to God's will, so I think this step has been helpful. I'm just still a little unclear. And I was talking to one of the girls from the group just yesterday, And I asked her the same question, and she said she had been in AA for a long time. And she said, well, I think it's a bit of everything. It's going to the meetings and, and sharing out and listening to stories and making your calls and your connections. And it's kind of like an umbrella. And that made sense to me. But it's just tying what we're doing with drinking is a little bit fuzzy for me.
Well, I think I would answer that in the way that, drinking is just a symptom of a deeper problem. Like what we're talking about is emotion management, right? And what we tend to do is we tend to want to disconnect, right? And so we shut down. But what's happening really is that the emotions are building up behind it like a dam. And then something triggers you, and then you have absolutely no control. The impulse is so strong to reach for something that has always worked. Mm-hmm. Whereas the other way of life is about dealing with the stresses as they come up and dealing with them and resolving them so that when a trigger or something does happen, you have a better chance of not reaching for that impulsive fix. Mm-hmm. Right. So it's,
that makes sense.
Yeah. It's something that happens slowly over time. For some people, it happens right away. But what we're doing really is we're trying to switch your thinking, right? Which can take a little bit of time. And with actions, we don't think ourselves into right living. We live our way into right thinking. It happens exactly opposite. I don't think my way into right living. Like you're taking actions and having an experience. It's a different cause and effect. You pick up the phone, you feel connected, you've resolved a fear. It's like you have a different experience. Mm-hmm. And so that becomes your coping mechanism as opposed to doing something like picking up a drink, isolating, and then feeling guilty, putting your kids in jeopardy, feeling, jeopardizing, compromising your health, spending a bunch of money. It's like, and lowering your self-esteem. So it's a different way of managing stress that doesn't have like a heavy price tag at the end of it.
Yeah. That makes sense.
Yeah. And listen, don't try to overthink it. It's like, there's this saying that if you work the steps will work you. Mm-hmm. And what you're doing is you're taking lots of action. And so just trust the process. Just trust that as you do these actions that feel unnatural and unsatisfying at first, as they become more natural and you get used to it, you start getting, it's cause and effect, right? That's why we're always talking, you can move mountains, but you better bring a shovel, right? Yeah. We have to take a bunch of actions. Mm-hmm. And so it's different actions, because if you keep doing what you're doing, you'll keep getting what you're getting. So we're just doing something new so that we can have different experiences, and it leads to sobriety.
Okay. And that was my goal with doing these. So that's good.
Yeah. Yeah.
Good. Okay.
So, all right. Well, listen, I haven't sent you step 4 because the sheets are kind of intense. Have you ever done an inventory before?
Yes. I started one. I don't know if I ever finished. I didn't finish it.
So let's do this. I'm going to send you the worksheets and we should probably have a discussion about it. But in essence, okay, we're on a podcast, but I'm going to draw you. Am I going to draw you a picture? Where's all my paper? I may not be drawing you. Hold on a second. Okay, so what we're going to do is start with your list of resentments, right? And so which is the fun part, right? This is license to bitch. You get to complain and write down all your resentments. So it's who you're resentful at is the first column, right? And then the second column is the cause. So we need to get really specific about the cause of the resentment. It can't be like 10 things all at once. We need to really break it down to find out what is underneath all the cause of the resentments, right? So it's get really specific about the cause of the resentment and then how it affected you. So it's typically like it damages your self-esteem, your relationship, it causes some kind of fear. There's going to be fears under all these effects, like how it affects you. But in the big book, it talks about personal relationship, self-esteem, security is a big one. And then the last column is your part. So it's like, what part did you play? So for instance, I might get my feelings hurt by something my husband says or does. And when I finally walk it all the way through, I can see that he was actually saying something in response to what I said. Mm-hmm. So I'm actually the cause. Mm-hmm. And he's responding, and I'm going to get all butthurt because, you know what I mean? Like, maybe I snapped at him and he like called me out on it, and then I got my feelings hurt. And it's like, well, maybe I shouldn't have snapped at him to begin with. Right? What's going on with me that I'm taking it out on him. Yeah. So it's just kind of interesting.
Different way to look at it.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and it's 4 columns. And typically what I do is you do one specific, and I'll leave, I should probably put these sheets up on the website, but it's who you resent out, specific cause, how it affects you, and then your part.
Okay. I wrote that down too. So if you don't get it to me, I have it.
Oh, okay.
I'm just trying to, there's a lot of sunlight coming in right now and I can't really see the screen. That's why.
Oh, okay. No worries.
But I did write down everything that you said.
Yeah. And in the homework assignment, it does tell you we're going to do it right out of the big book. Right. So we're not doing anything out of the ordinary. It's just, that's how it's outlined in the big book is the columns. And so start with one person, get through every reason why you're resentful. I'm going to have you do maybe one person and a couple of resentments. And then let's just check in to make sure that the process is flowing well for you. And then we'll turn you loose to finish the rest of it. And then we'll make an appointment to your inventory on the podcast.
Should these be all current resentments, or like if there's something that happened a long time ago that's long resolved that I never think about, do I need to put that down too, or not really?
You pray for guidance. I honestly don't know.
Okay.
It's
okay,
whatever.
So
if it's
go with my gut.
Go with your gut.
Okay.
I mean, I don't want to rehash something that you feel is resolved.
Okay.
But there might be clues and patterns. Like the more information that you're able to write down, the more it's just like any kind of data analysis. It's like the more data you have, the more the patterns emerge.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay. But if it's not, I mean, I hate to drag up things that aren't bothering you anymore, but if it comes up, just write it down.
Okay, I will.
Yeah. Cool.
All right.
Well, good job. Thank you so much for doing this. I really enjoyed our conversation.
I did too. You really helped clarify a few things that I really need to start thinking about. So
good. Thank you for your questions.
Things that I was completely oblivious about before. So really good.
Good. Yay. Yeah. All right. Well, listen, you have a good rest of your day, and let's check in. Yeah, let's check in after you have a couple of examples on your inventory, and we'll build from there.
Okay. Sounds good.
All right. You have a great day.
Thanks. You too.
Bye, hon.
Bye.
One last thing before you go, if you enjoyed the podcast today, please don't forget to subscribe on iTunes or Stitcher and leave a review. And if you'd like to make a donation to the podcast and help me keep the lights on, you can do so by visiting odatchat.com. There's a donation button or membership button on the right-hand side. Have a great day. Thank you so much for joining us.